My name is Maggie, and I work for a company. At 29 years old, I recently tied the knot with my husband, William, following over 2 years of courtship. We embarked on our marital journey in the same apartment I'd occupied since my days of singledom, a generous gift from my father upon securing my job. With my brother and his wife opting to live with our parents, I seized the opportunity to carve out my own path. My father, never short on resources, ensured I had a cozy apartment close to our family home. Whether his intention was to provide support or keep me nearby, I'm not entirely sure. Nonetheless, I found myself in a comfortable living space. William had previously resided in a cramped apartment, unsuitable for two. Hence, upon our decision to wed, he promptly relocated to my more spacious and affordable abode. My initial encounter with William's family residence occurred during a winter visit to their snow-laden locale. Having grown up in the city, the sheer volume of snow and bone-chilling temperatures astounded me. At William's family home, nestled in a snow-heavy region, I encountered a world entirely foreign to my urban upbringing. An old-fashioned house, reminiscent of a fairy tale setting, housed my mother-in-law and brother-in-law. Once, when William's father was alive, they dabbled in part-time farming amidst vast fields. Their nearest neighbors were a considerable distance away. What truly took me aback, however, was the placement of the toilet and bath outside the confines of the house. Initially, I believed I could handle occasional visits, but the thought of residing there long-term seemed daunting, particularly during harsh winters with snow and freezing temperatures. Summoning the courage to venture outside for a midnight bathroom break was a feat in itself, and the risk of catching a cold post-shower loomed large due to plummeting temperatures. During our marriage greetings, I didn't experience the shower ordeal firsthand, but navigating the outdoor toilet was undeniably challenging. Despite the hardships, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law were exceptionally kind, offering a sense of relief. Though we wouldn't be sharing a roof, the notion of us morphing into one family was comforting, and I yearned to cultivate a harmonious bond with them. However, a nagging concern lingered. My mother-in-law's demeanor shifted when alone with my husband, her smiles masking murmured grievances. Moreover, my brother-in-law's past marriage, shrouded in mystery due to my husband's reluctance to divulge details, fueled my unease. Although marital issues are commonplace, my husband's silence regarding his brother's divorce left me with unanswered questions. Despite my father's reassurances at our wedding, citing my mother-in-law's radiant smile as a sign of her kindness, doubts gnawed at me. I returned his smile to my father, but my mother's expression hinted at a different sentiment. Despite her pleasant facade in public, she often wore a grumpy countenance when she believed no one was watching. "Be careful," she cautioned me, "she might be two-faced." Yet I brushed off her warning, believing any potential issues would only arise if we lived together. Initially, our married life in the apartment unfolded joyfully, free from apprehension. However, 3 months into our union, a shift occurred. My husband gradually began shirking household responsibilities, unilaterally making decisions. Despite our agreement to share chores, he started to slack off. Initially, he'd assist with tasks like cleaning the bathroom or preparing dinner when I returned late from work. Yet, his willingness waned, leaving me burdened with these duties alone. Sometimes, his impatience would surface, demanding dinner hastily as he claimed fatigue from his own workday. My frustration mounted not just from the workload, but also from his unilateral decisions. Perhaps there were warning signs before marriage, but I had mistaken them for signs of decisiveness and reliability. Soon after our wedding, furniture and a sofa mysteriously arrived at our doorstep, leaving me bewildered. When questioned, my husband casually remarked, "I don't feel the current vibe of this room suits me," with a smile. So I contemplated the idea of replacing the furniture with pieces that suited my taste. However, my husband had different plans. He wanted to discard all my chosen furniture and overhaul the room to match his preferences. Had he consulted me, we could have selected new pieces together. Yet he acted independently, disregarding my preferences entirely. While he had every right to style his own space as he pleased, I found his unilateral decisions regarding our shared living area irksome. His design sense lacked coherence, leaving me speechless at the hodgepodge of mismatched furniture colors and shapes. Then he sprung an unexpected proposal on me. It would be nice if you could pay for it. After all, this was originally your apartment, wasn't it? I was already frustrated by his tasteless furniture takeover, and now he was asking me to foot the bill. I questioned him incredulously, pointing out that it was furniture he purchased on his own. Uncharacteristically, I stood my ground firmly, unwilling to let him off the hook. Despite the tensions at home, we decided to spend our first Christmas as a married couple at his parents' house. It was my inaugural visit, and I felt a mix of anxiety and nervousness. Yet my mother-in-law greeted me kindly, assuring me that I could relax there. Still, I couldn't shake off a sense of caution, recalling my mother's advice. There might be a hidden side to my mother-in-law, I thought. During my stay, I observed my mother-in-law mostly resting, reminiscing about past times when brides ate alone in the kitchen. Confused by her tales, I noticed my brother-in-law subtly cautioning her, but my husband remained oblivious. As I endured my mother-in-law's sarcastic remarks, I couldn't help but wonder about the dynamics within their family. I volunteered to tidy up after dinner, but she waved me off with a smile, insisting, "I'll do it. I wouldn't want you to break any of our precious dishes." Her words echoed my mother's earlier advice, hitting home with their accuracy. The first day brimmed with her subtle sarcasm, setting an uneasy tone. The following day, events took a darker turn. With my husband out drinking with friends and my brother-in-law on a Fire Brigade trip, it was just my mother-in-law and me. Frankly, I felt a knot of nerves tightening in my stomach. After dinner, as she stepped into the shower, I finally began to relax. But her parting words, "I'm going to bed now, make sure to lock the front door," jolted me back to reality. Awkwardly, I affirmed her instruction and readied myself to bathe in the separate bathhouse. A chilly prospect for this unaccustomed city dweller. As I settled into the tub, the lights in the main house abruptly went out. An initial assumption of a power outage wavered when I noticed neighboring lights still aglow. Straining to hear over the water, I thought I detected faint footsteps outside. Hesitantly, I remained motionless, listening intently. Soon, darkness enveloped me, prompting suspicion that my mother-in-law might be orchestrating a cruel prank. Despite doubting her capable of such malice, her penchant for sarcasm with a smile planted seeds of unease. Hastily drying off and changing into pajamas, I fumbled in the pitch-black room. Moonlight eventually filtered in, granting me some visibility. As I pondered the absurdity of the situation, my attempts to exit the room proved futile. The door remained stubbornly shut, impervious to my efforts. Panic began to set in. Though a window offered an escape route, its bars sealed my fate. Thankfully, I had my smartphone, a beacon of hope in the darkness. I attempted to reach my husband for assistance, but he remained unresponsive. On the third try, he finally picked up, only to bellow loudly, clearly intoxicated and preoccupied with his revelry. Desperately, I pleaded for his help, explaining my predicament with the bathroom door refusing to budge. His response, dismissive and vague, offered little comfort. He blamed me for showering at such a time, citing his inebriation as a barrier to his assistance before abruptly ending the call. Subsequent attempts to reach him proved futile as he seemingly switched off his phone. Contemplating my options, I considered involving the authorities but hesitated, fearing potential repercussions from my mother-in-law's wrath. Instead, I resolved to seek a means of escape independently. Shouting for help through the frozen bathroom window proved fruitless. With each passing moment, the threat of freezing in the frigid confines loomed larger. Just as I was on the verge of contacting emergency services, a voice from outside shattered the silence, inquiring about the power outage. Relief flooded over me as I realized someone was attempting to assist. With gentle knocking, the door finally yielded, granting me freedom. Profoundly grateful, I thanked the elderly neighbor who had come to my aid. His muttered comment about my mother-in-law's habitual behavior added a somber note to the situation. Guided to safety at the neighbor's house, I was met with surprise from his wife. After the neighbor explained the ordeal, she welcomed me warmly, offering solace in the form of a blanket. It was a small comfort in the face of the unsettling events of the evening. Clad only in pajamas, I found solace in a cup of warm tea graciously offered by the elderly neighbor once my nerves had settled. It was then that the old man disclosed unsettling tales of my mother-in-law's history of tormenting her daughters-in-law. "Your mother-in-law has a habit of bullying her son's wives," he explained gravely. "She's locked several in the bath before. The wife of the eldest son suffered multiple incidents and eventually left the house. Even your husband's previous fiancé fell victim to her schemes." As the old couple recounted, they had noticed the bathroom light shining in the darkness, prompting their intervention. Aware of our marriage, they expressed concern that my mother-in-law might repeat her past behavior. With the hour growing late and the main house securely locked, I opted to spend the night with the neighbors. Awakening to the sound of an ambulance siren the next morning, I peered out the window to witness its arrival at my in-laws' house. My husband stood frozen by the detached bathroom, his expression tense. I hurried towards the commotion, fearing the worst. Perhaps my husband had mistaken my absence for an emergency and summoned help. However, the reality that unfolded was far more surreal. My husband, upon seeing me, erupted in accusations, questioning why his mother lay motionless in the bathroom. Stunned by his words, I cautiously approached the scene, peering into the bathroom to witness a figure lying prone on the floor. Relief washed over me as the woman stirred, indicating that her condition was not critical. It was my mother-in-law, her features unmistakable even in the dim light. I couldn't comprehend why she lay there, motionless. A paramedic explained that she had likely slipped on soap, losing consciousness from the impact. My panic during the blackout may have caused me to scatter items like soap, which remained unnoticed in the darkness. In the early morning, my mother-in-law might have entered the bathroom to check on me, only to slip and fall due to the soap. As she was carried past on a stretcher, her stern glare bore into me. Later, when my husband was transported to the hospital, the neighbors offered their relief that I remained unharmed. They saw it as divine retribution for the hardships I faced as a daughter-in-law. Grateful for their intervention, I reflected on how fortunate I was, realizing that the outcome could have been different if not for the old man's timely help. After changing, I informed my brother-in-law about my mother-in-law's hospitalization. He decided to rush to the hospital immediately. Alone, I returned to the detached bathroom, contemplating the events of the previous night. There, I noticed a stick used to bar the door shut, explaining why I couldn't escape. That afternoon, my mother-in-law returned home, her anger directed at me for leaving the bathroom without informing her. As I pondered my response, my husband joined in, blaming me for the ordeal. However, my brother-in-law intervened, condemning their cruel game of locking me in the bathroom. Later, my brother-in-law returned, ready to leave the house for good. Fed up with his role as caretaker, he announced his departure, leaving my husband and mother-in-law to their devices. Unable to endure the toxicity any longer, I followed suit, requesting my brother-in-law to drop me off at the nearby station. My husband's desperate attempts to stop me only fueled my resolve. Firmly, I declared my intent to divorce, reminding him of his indifference to my plight the day before. I vowed to prepare the divorce papers myself, determined to break free from the suffocating atmosphere. I sat in my brother-in-law's car as he drove me to the nearest station, his apologies pouring forth. "I'm truly sorry, Maddie. I never imagined you'd suffer like this. Those cruel people are strangers to me now," he confessed earnestly. Once back in my apartment, I wasted no time. I drafted the divorce papers and began packing my husband's belongings. Upon his return, he was taken aback to find his things neatly packed. My mention of divorce seemed to him a jest until he laid eyes on the papers. Infuriated, he dismissed my concerns as trivial. Realizing further conversation was futile, I quietly handed him the documents. Reluctantly, he signed them, and just like that, he was gone. However, it became evident that he lacked the means to secure another place to stay. Throughout our marriage, he had been reliant on my income, often squandering his own and accumulating debt. Initially crashing with a coworker, even that support dwindled over time, leaving him isolated and jobless. Meanwhile, rumors swirled about my mother-in-law's behavior, painting her as the catalyst for our divorce. She, too, faced solitude and financial strain, abandoned by both family and neighbors. With my brother-in-law also gone, she struggled to make ends meet on her pension, isolated in the countryside without any assistance. In the aftermath of the divorce, I rid my home of the garish furniture my husband had chosen, embracing a fresh start with pieces of my own preference. Hopeful for a brighter future and open to new, positive encounters, I embarked on a journey of self-renewal.
Hi, I'm Ava, and my relationship with my mother-in-law has never been good. Right from the start, she's been unfriendly and disrespectful towards me. It's like she doesn't think I'm the right choice for her son. Things got worse when my husband and I decided to buy our first home. He helped pay for it, but my mother-in-law constantly criticized it, pointing out every flaw and buying decorations I didn't like. The situation hit rock bottom when she started trying to turn my husband against me. She'd call him and make up lies about things I'd supposedly said or done, trying to break us apart. I tried to stay positive and hoped things would get better, but eventually I had to stand up for myself. I decided to invite my mother-in-law over for dinner to try to fix our relationship. I spent a long time cooking and getting everything ready, but she hardly ate anything. "Mary, Ansel, and I are happy you could join us for dinner," Ansel said. "I even made your favorite meal." But my mother-in-law wasn't impressed. "Unfortunately, it looks like my least favorite dish," she snapped. "This isn't food. I wouldn't even give this to a pet. Do you really call this cooking? Do you even know how to make bread? What on earth is this? I'm making an effort here, Mary, trying to mend things with you and make things better between us. But it feels like I'm doing it alone. You're just being mean." "Well, it's still practically indible. How does Ansel stomach this? Maybe you should consider taking some cooking classes." "Mary, I spent a lot of time and effort on this meal. Please try to appreciate it." "Fine, I'll give it another try. But you'll need to do better if you want to impress me. Just being Ansel's wife isn't enough." "I'm not trying to impress you, Mary. I just wanted us to have a nice dinner together. I didn't expect dinner with Godzilla." "Oh, I heard from Ansel that you burnt the roast last week." "I did mess up with the roast, but I've learned from that mistake and I'm improving. Can we please just focus on enjoying this meal? Can you try to be less grumpy for once?" Throughout the meal, my mother-in-law kept making snide remarks while picking at her food. I felt really uneasy in my own home, and Ansel didn't stand up for me. He just said it was up to the ladies to sort things out and never defended me when his mom criticized me. So I stayed quiet and listened, even though it hurt. I remember going to my aunt's birthday party. She'd set up the basement for painting, wine, and snacks. It was meant to be fun, but things got awkward when my own personal Godzilla showed up. "Hey auntie, happy birthday. This painting and wine idea is awesome. I'm excited to join in." "Oh, you're so sweet. I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's just a nice way to relax and have some fun." Well, I have to admit, seeing my mother-in-law here is a bit of a surprise. "Oh, Mary, she and I get along really well. I admire her sense of style." "Oops, I forgot to mention I invited her. I know you two haven't always seen eye to eye, but I thought I'd give it a shot at smoothing things over. And well, she's family. You know she makes me uncomfortable. She's always so rude and passive-aggressive." "I understand, and I'm sorry. Just try to keep your distance from me. Let's try to enjoy the evening and not let her bother you too much." My mother-in-law wore a really revealing shirt. She also accidentally got paint on herself while drinking, so my aunt and mom tried to help her clean up in the bathroom. I joined them because I didn't want to leave my mom alone with my mother-in-law. You know, Jesse has been such an amazing boyfriend to me. He treats me like a queen and is always so thoughtful. Jess, you're Jess. Ava mentioned he was really mean to her and Ansel back in school. Oh, he's changed a lot since then. He has a great job now and always takes me to nice restaurants and buys me gifts. What does Ansel think about all this? I remember there was some tension between him and Jesse in the past. Oh, he doesn't know. He's just stubborn and holds onto grudges. But I'm happy, and that's what matters right now. I'll tell him when the time is right. It turned out my husband's old bully Jesse was now dating my mother-in-law. Knowing my husband disliked Jesse, I felt uneasy about it. I talked to my mother-in-law, but she got upset. It seemed like she always wanted to cause trouble between my husband and me, which frustrated me. I needed someone to support me, but Ansel wasn't doing that. So, I decided to confront her myself. It seems like you're always trying to create problems between Ansel and me. What are you talking about? I've never tried to cause problems between you and Ansel. Really? What about when you came over for dinner and hardly ate anything while making snide remarks? Of that, I just wasn't feeling well that day. And what about at my aunt's party when you wore that revealing shirt, got drunk, and ended up covered in paint? My mom and aunt had to help you clean up. That was just a little slip-up. I didn't mean any harm. And then there's Jesse, Ansel's old bully, now dating you. I know Ansel can't stand him, yet you're still with him. I'm giving you one day to tell Ansel about this yourself, or I'll have to do it. Jesse is a great guy, and Ansel should learn to let go of the past. Your actions have consequences for our marriage. I want us to get along, but it's tough when you keep stirring up trouble. Later that night, I got a phone call that changed everything. Living with Ansel felt like living with a lazy, unproductive stranger. He spent most of his days lounging on the couch, watching TV, and scrolling through the internet. Whenever I asked for help with chores or errands, he'd either make excuses or ignore me altogether. He was never there for me emotionally, never supportive. My feelings and concerns were brushed aside, or he'd nod without really listening. It was like living with someone who didn't care about building a life together. And could you please help me with the dishes? They're stacking up in the sink. I'm a bit busy right now. Can't you do them later? I have a work deadline, and I won't be able to get to the dishes until later tonight. Can you please take a few minutes to help me out? I just don't see why I always have to do everything you ask. I have my own things to take care of, you know. Like what exactly? You've been sitting on the couch all day. I've been looking for a job, okay. It's not easy finding something that matches my qualifications. I get that, but I also need you to help out around the house. And speaking of which, why are you still charging me rent for using the basement as my office? I paid for this whole house. Well, you know I have to contribute to the household expenses somehow, and technically, the basement is mine since I paid for it. Are you serious? I own this entire house. I already contribute by paying for groceries and bills. All you do is ignore me and let your mom say whatever she wants. You're lazy, stuck up, and I can't deal with it anymore. You always take advantage of me. I work long hours to earn money and help with our home. Even though I bought the whole house, I let Ansel rent the basement from me while I worked from home. I'm tired of it all. Things need to change. You're not pulling your weight around here, and your mom keeps interfering. I can't handle it anymore. What do you want me to do, Ava? I can't just cut my mom out of my life. She's my mom. I'm not asking you to cut her out, but you need to start standing up for me and helping out more around the house. If things don't change, I'm seriously thinking about divorce. During the argument, Ansel stayed quiet, but later I found out he was complaining to his mom. Every time he did, Mary would say something mean to me. Seeing him siding with her made me really angry. It was getting harder and harder to deal with their rudeness. I hated every moment of it and just wanted to get away. Then, to my shock, my mother-in-law showed up at our house that night and threw divorce papers at me, treating me like I was worthless. Look, I know you're upset with me right now, but you have to understand that I can't let you keep hurting my husband and our relationship. It's not fair to either of us. Oh, spare me the lecture. You think you're perfect, but you don't know what it takes to make a marriage work. Have those divorce papers signed and ready by tomorrow. I don't want to hear a word from someone like you. You'll never be good enough for my Ansel. I knew he was marrying a witch. Get out of our lives by tomorrow morning. Take those papers and disappear from his life. You're worthless. Oh, and by the way, you're supposed to rent out your house and move in with us for the summer. Let's see how that goes. Maybe Mary doesn't know there are consequences for your actions. Ansel has no money. Everything you have, the gifts, the trips, it's all because of my hard work and money. Don't act like you're some queen who can do whatever she wants. Who do you think paid for that diamond ring? Who pays for your car? No, that can't be true. You're lying. What do you mean Ansel has no money? I mean exactly what I said. He's been living off my income and the rent he gets from me for too long. And it's not fair to me. He's just lazy and useless, stinking up the room all day. Well, that's absurd. Ansel is a grown man, my son. He wouldn't let you support him like that. Listen, I've been more than generous for far too long, and you've both taken advantage of it. Ansel relies on my money, and so do you. You're both just draining the life out of someone. Maybe one day, if you ever realize it, I hope you'll see things from my point of view. As I looked through the divorce papers, I realized this was my ticket to freedom. Then, I heard something I never expected to hear. Ava, I'm really sorry. Please don't read through those papers. I had no idea about any of this. Please give me a chance to explain. I know I've been tough to deal with, and I regret how I've treated you. Sorry, that's rich coming from you. Just put it down. I admit I haven't been great, but I'm ready to change. You never told me about the financial situation. You're just a bully. No wonder you and Jesse hit it off. And Ansel's not innocent either. He's lazy and takes advantage of me, and you've enabled him. Please don't sign those papers. I pushed Ansel to this. Please, I'm begging you, don't leave him. He's my son, and I care about him deeply. We can figure things out, even the money. I can move in with you, and you can still pay rent. Pay you rent in my own house. I can't stay in this toxic environment any longer. You both are awful, and I can't even stand to look at your nasty face right now. It was tough to say, but I knew it was true. Ansel finally got up from the couch and pleaded with me to stay, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I also knew my mother-in-law would try to talk me out of it, but I wasn't backing down. As I grabbed the papers and walked away from my mother-in-law, my heart felt heavy with the weight of my decision. I knew what I was about to do would change everything. I needed so much from Ansel that he could never give me. I wanted a close-knit family, but his mother's behavior was unbearable. I called my mom and my aunt because they were the closest to me. I needed to vent. Who else would understand me better? I don't know what to do anymore. Ansel just lounges around all day, not lifting a finger to help with anything. I even pay rent in my own house so he can have some spending money, and dealing with Mary is a nightmare. Have you talked to him about it? Yes, but he gets defensive and claims he's trying his best. But it's clear he's not putting in any effort. That's not fair to you, Ava. You work hard for your money, and he should be pitching in too. Exactly. It's frustrating to see him act this way, especially when his mom can easily influence him. I want to sit down and have a serious talk with him about all of this. I arrived home to find several voicemails from Mary, pleading for me to stay. Do you even know about this? Is this something you want to argue about again? God, you're so irritating. Just tell me. Wow, the whole family's nuts, huh? By the way, your mom's dating Jesse. And thanks for never mentioning that you've been wanting a divorce for ages. She's dating Jess. She knows how awful he was to me. How could she do this? And Ava, with all your nagging, I don't want to be with someone like you. My mom was right, you're not good enough for me. I don't want to sign those papers, but dealing with you is unbearable. I regret even begging you to stay. I can manage just fine without you. I'm a man. I can support myself. I'm not good enough for you. Take a look at yourself. You haven't showered in 5 days because you haven't gotten a single job notification. You've been on unemployment for ages. It's sad to see you like this. Finally, he looked at me. What? You think that about me? Are you leaving me? We just wanted to scare you. If I told you how you made me feel, you'd reconsider. The papers were a way to show you that you were being difficult and awful to me, and we wanted to teach you a lesson. Wow, I can't even begin to deal with you guys. You're both insane, and I can't believe this is happening. I've signed the papers and called my attorney. You'll hear from him soon. I want you out of this house by 5 p.m. today, and here's the $20,000 you paid for that stupid basement. I threw the money at Ansel's face, and Mary stood at the door, staring at me in shock. I won't sign those papers. Fine, then I have no choice but to report your mother for abuse and theft to the authorities. You've both been taking advantage of me, making me pay rent in my own house. What about us? What about our life? Good luck with that. Hope you don't end up starving under a bridge. Don't ever contact me again. I want you out by tonight. As I walked away, Ansel complained that none of this was fair to him and accused me of being mean. Mary kept begging me to stay and pleading with me. But I knew leaving them behind was the best thing for me. I had put Ansel on a pedestal for too long. I needed to realize he was just a flawed human being, and a pretty terrible one at that. Leaving him and kicking them out of my house was the most peaceful decision I could make for myself. It wasn't easy, and I still struggle with it, but I knew I had to do it. I had been taken advantage of and manipulated for far too long, and I was ready to move on and start anew. After they left, I focused on myself and my own happiness. I bought a new home in a different city and began to build a life that was entirely my own. I started working on my own firm with some colleagues from my workplace, and although it was challenging, it was also exhilarating to build something from scratch. Everything was growing, and I was eager to keep expanding. Yay, I'm really impressed by what you've achieved with the firm. You've been working so hard, and it's really showing. Thank you, Ethan. It's been tough, but it's definitely paying off. I'm really excited about what's next for us. Talking about the future, have you thought about expanding the firm? Maybe hiring more people or opening another location? Actually, I have. I've been looking into it, and it seems like a possibility. I'm still in the early stages of planning, but it's definitely something I'm considering. I've also adopted a son who brings so much joy and happiness into my life every day. He's my little ray of sunshine, and I cherish him deeply. We love spending time together soaking up the sun at the park. As for Ansel and Mary, I've completely cut them out of my life. Mary occasionally calls, asking for money. You took everything from us. We're left with nothing. Ansel and I are struggling to get by, living in a motel and running out of money. Send us some money. You owe us enough to help us out. I owe you nothing, and I'm sorry to hear you're going through a tough time. However, I won't be able to help you financially. Both you and Ansel need to take responsibility for your own lives. This lazy man has been sitting around doing nothing. I've been working tirelessly, taking on jobs here and there. No one's hiring him. Don't count on me to support you. I told you who your son was, and you said he was too good for me. You and Ansel need to figure things out together. I understand your apologies, but I can't forget how you treated me. You both have been awful. You don't know how I'm doing. I've hit rock bottom. Jesse won't talk to me. I have nothing left. Let me tell you what happened. Please just listen. I didn't want to hear her talk about Jesse, but I didn't want my son to see me get angry and argue with my mother-in-law. So I let her speak, and she told me about a conversation she had with her boyfriend. I refused to let her manipulate me any longer. After that conversation, I blocked her and never spoke to her again. Recently, I learned that my ex-husband finally found a job as a janitor at a school, but is still struggling financially. While I understand living paycheck to paycheck, I have no sympathy. He took advantage of me and my money, and I'm relieved that chapter of my life is over. Mary and Ansel now live in a shelter and are facing eviction onto the streets. Ansel has even lost his spot at the shelter and now lives under a nearby bridge. Mary has managed to secure benefits due to her age, allowing her to stay in the shelter. As for me, I've bought a new home and have a different address now. I didn't want to stay in that old house. I've also gained new clients, and my son and I enjoy swimming, so I bought a home with a pool and a yard to play in with my little sunshine. My in-laws were drunk. Despite the whispers from people around us, my in-laws didn't seem to care as they kept yelling at me. Well, I guess it's too late since you're already married, but if you want to be part of this family, you need to show us you have enough money, they said. Yes, your dad is right, so make sure to give us $1,000 a month as a new bonus, they'd added. I was stunned by their words. I couldn't believe they would say such things at a wedding reception. I just stared at them, my face going pale. My dad took the microphone from them. Enough is enough. Don't you realize you're making fools of yourselves? He said. My name is Linda. I'm a 30-year-old office worker. I'm currently dating Larry, who is 32, 2 years older than me. I met him through a friend who was worried about me being single, so she introduced me to Larry. After dating for a year, Larry proposed, and now we are soon to be married. I lost my mother when I was very young, and my father raised me by himself. He worked very hard to take care of all my needs. I didn't have many worries growing up, but losing my mom, who I loved so much, deeply hurt me. Because I lost someone I cared about so much, I was cautious with my emotions. That's why I hadn't really dated anyone since my school days. I'd even thought it would be okay if I stayed single forever. Then I met Larry. At first, I didn't feel any romantic feelings for him, even though he asked me out many times. Larry really cared about me and was always a gentleman. Slowly, I began to open my heart to him, and we started dating. He kept caring for me, and I felt very happy. He became very special to me, and I started thinking I wanted to be with him forever. Then he proposed, and we decided to get married. Larry understood everything about me and was always kind to me no matter what. Don't worry, if you're ever feeling unsure about something, I'll be here for you until you feel better. I love you, Linda. You can count on me, he would say. His words moved me. He promised to make me happy for the rest of my life. Just being with him warmed my heart. If he cared that much for me, I thought I should do the same for him. When I told my father that we decided to get married, he was so happy that he cried. Wow, Linda, you're finally getting married. I'm so happy for you, he said. Oh, Dad, you're being dramatic, I joked. Wow, I hadn't heard anything like that from you until now. I was always worried that you might never get married, he replied. Oh, really? I had no idea you were worried about that, I said. Well, every father worries about his daughter, you know. Anyway, congratulations, he said. Thanks, Dad, I replied. I was so happy to be congratulated by my dad, who had raised me by himself. I thought I would probably cry at the wedding, and my dad would probably cry even more since he was already crying now. With that, Larry and I started preparing for our wedding. We were both busy with our jobs, so our days were very hectic. We worked during the weekdays and made wedding preparations over the weekends. There was no time to rest. Our calendars were always full. On the rare day off, we were supposed to visit Larry's parents' house. It was my first time meeting them. Larry had met my father right after he proposed to me. Originally, I planned to visit Larry's parents soon after, but they were busy and our schedules never lined up. Finally, we managed to arrange a visit. As we arrived, I suddenly felt nervous. Don't worry, my parents are very kind, Larry reassured me. His words made me feel a bit better, and I rang the doorbell. It was his mother who opened the door. Mom, I'm home, Larry said. Welcome home, Larry. It's so good of you to come, his mother replied warmly. As she talked with her son, I greeted her politely. Nice to meet you. My name is Linda, and I'm Larry's fiancée. I see, so you're Linda, she said, her tone shifting. She looked me up and down, her smile fading. Then she led us to the living room, where her cold attitude remained. Linda, I'm curious about what you bring to the table. Larry is our treasure and our only child. If you're going to marry him, you need to be a suitable wife. Are you worthy of him? She asked, sounding more like an interrogation. I was taken aback by her question. I hadn't expected such a cold attitude from my future mother-in-law and was at a loss for words. You're going to join our family, you know. Are you ready for that? She continued. True, marrying Larry meant joining his family, but it's not like Larry's family were the Kennedys or some well-known high society family. It's not like I was marrying into a royal family. Why was I being asked to make such a commitment? Besides, I wasn't even going to live with them. I don't like being pressured with questions like these. As I was thinking about how to respond, his mother seemed impatient with my slow reply and scolded me harshly. When I ask you a question, answer me right away. You're so rude, she snapped. I'm asking if you're ready for this, she continued, raising her voice. Despite feeling overwhelmed, I managed to say, I hope that Larry and I will support each other in our marriage. When I said that, his mother was not convinced. What a naive thing to say. You aren't just going to support each other. You were supposed to support Larry. It's your job as a wife to support your husband. You don't even understand the basics, she criticized. Then Larry's father, who was sitting next to her, intervened. Honey, calm down. Sorry about that, Linda. You must have been startled by my wife's words, he said, trying to ease the tension. It's all right, I replied, trying to remain calm. His mother is very protective of her only son. Maybe she was just nervous and spoke without thinking. Just then, Larry's brother walked in. He spoke in a quiet, calm, and gentle tone. He seemed like a kind man, which gave me a moment of relief. But that relief was short-lived. With a smile on his face, he said the most unexpected thing. What my wife says is actually justified. What concerns me the most is that you come from a single-parent family. What do you mean by that? I asked, confused. Well, being raised by just one parent doesn't have a good public image. We can't be too happy to have such a person become the wife of our only son, can we? He explained. Hold on a minute, I said. unable to let this comment slide. What is wrong with being raised by a single parent? My father worked very hard to raise me by himself. I am very thankful for my upbringing, and I am proud of my father. Being raised by a single parent doesn't make me any less valuable. But they still argued. Since you were missing one parent, you couldn't have learned how to be a good wife, do housework, and such. I responded, I did a lot of housework to help my father. I can also cook pretty well, so please don't say that. Despite my response, Larry's words ignored what I said, and he finally stated, I will allow you to marry Larry, but in exchange, you must promise to devote everything to us because we are Larry's parents. Can you promise me that? What? I was shocked. Wow, since you came here to ask for our permission to marry our son, you do know what your duties are, don't you? Before I could say more, he continued the conversation. I found that my in-laws had completely taken over the conversation, giving me little chance to respond. That night, as I thought more about the marriage, I decided to share my feelings with Larry. Say, Larry, do your parents always talk to people like that? What about it? Larry seemed unfazed. I was surprised that Larry didn't see anything wrong with what his parents had said to me. Well, I mean the way your parents spoke to me and what they said. Oh, really? Well, they were just talking about whether you were ready for this marriage. I get that your parents are worried about their son's marriage, but I feel like what they were saying was a bit too much, I said. Really? Why is that? My parents didn't say anything wrong. Besides, they've given us permission to get married, so don't worry about it. Larry replied. That's true, but I felt uneasy, I said. Larry seemed to side with his parents more than with me, and that was very troubling. I guess he realized I was feeling unsure because he gave me a hug. Linda, you don't have to worry so much. My parents are just a bit upset because their only son is getting married, he said. He spoke as if he didn't fully support me. It's all going to be fine. Don't overthink it. I'm sure they just want what's best for us. They want us to be as good of a couple as they are. That's why they were a bit harsh. Oh, really? I replied. Like he said, maybe his parents have high expectations for us. But even if that's the case, I don't think it's right for them to belittle me because I was raised by my father. I don't think people who say such things make a good couple. We are the ones getting married, and we should be the focus, not their approval or disapproval. With that perspective, although I was still a bit upset, I decided not to dwell too much on his parents' opinions. Then the day of the wedding arrived. We had many guests, including our relatives, friends, colleagues, and bosses. I walked down the aisle with my father, who had raised me all my life. Larry and I exchanged our vows and rings. We were met with applause, and for the first time, I truly realized that I was getting married to Larry. I felt a happiness I had never felt before. As we walked into the reception hall, we made our way through the crowd, greeted by videos of us as part of the entertainment. It was a joyful time. I chatted with friends I hadn't seen in a while, and many people congratulated us. Despite my earlier worries about his parents, I was glad I had decided to marry Larry. I was glad we decided to have a memorable day. After the ceremony, we planned to officially register our marriage, and Larry and I would become husband and wife. I cherished every moment and felt so happy. Time flew by, and soon it was time for the final part of the event. The bride and groom and both sets of parents lined up to greet the guests, but I started to feel uneasy because of Larry's parents. We were all supposed to be standing in line, but his parents were wobbly on their feet. If you looked closely, you could see that their faces were bright red. They had drunk too much. Some relatives asked if they were okay. My in-laws were clearly drunk, but we had to wrap up the ceremony and get it over with. The moderator handed the microphone to me and Larry. Suddenly, Larry's mother snatched my hand away from him and yelled at me like a professional wrestler in the middle of a challenge. Listen to me, Linda. After this wedding, you are going to devote yourself to us completely. Prepare yourself because we are going to test you really hard, she said. The guests started whispering to each other, and some even thought it was a joke and laughed. Then Larry's father grabbed the microphone. Linda, don't you feel embarrassed to wear a dress like that? It doesn't suit you at all, dear. You should tell her the truth, his mother chimed in. As expected, the whispers among the guests changed in tone. I looked at Larry, hoping he would stop his father's rude comments, but Larry said he couldn't do that and that his parents weren't doing anything wrong. It became clear he would never protect me from his parents in the future. That was the moment I realized it. I was certain of it, even as the hall buzzed around us. My in-laws were drunk and continued to insult me. Well, you're already married, but if you're going to be part of this family, You need to prove that you have enough money, they said. Yes, that's right, they continued. After you register your marriage at the city hall, you should give us a few thousand a month and your entire bonus. I was shocked by their words. I never thought they would say such things at our wedding reception. I just stared at them, feeling my face go pale. My father took the microphone from them. Enough of this. Don't you realize you're making fools of yourselves? He said. Though still showing some respect, his parents glared at my father. Why are you interrupting us while we're talking? I knew this woman's father was no good. Single parents are never any good, they said. Why do they talk like this? How dare they insult my father? I thought. My father, keeping his cool, replied, You people are even worse than I imagined. You'd even refuse to meet me because I am a single father. I never thought that someone like you would work for President Scott. President Scott is such a respectable person. I assumed his employees would be decent as well, my father continued. At that, my father-in-law's face turned very serious. How do you know President Scott? He's a business partner of my company and, more importantly, an old friend of mine, my father explained. And speaking of single parents, President Scott was raised by his mother alone. So you just insulted the president of the company you work for. Seeing my in-laws' faces fall at my father's words, I realized they finally understood the mess they had gotten themselves into. I apologize, sir. Please don't tell the president about this, my in-law pleaded, suddenly falling to his knees. Just moments before, he had acted like he was in charge, but now he looked defeated. I could hear laughter from the guests. Some even pulled out their cell phones to record the scene. No matter how much you apologize, you can't take back your words, my dad said. He walked over to me and asked if I wanted to go home with him. I said yes and took the microphone from Larry's hand. Thank you for the great entertainment, but there will be no marriage, I announced to Larry, his parents, and everyone who attended. I will make sure to return the money you gave us for this occasion. Then I left the reception hall with my dad. I caught a glimpse of Larry and his parents looking dismayed, and soon after, his relatives rushed over with worried expressions on their faces. The place must have been in complete chaos. As I returned their money, I apologized to the guests. They all expressed sympathy for me and praised me and my dad for our actions, saying it was good that we weren't taken advantage of by such terrible people. Later, Larry's co-workers who had attended the reception must have spread the word about what happened at his company. Larry became known for having such unreasonable parents and was criticized for having a weak character. His embarrassment was so great that he resigned voluntarily. Of course, the president of my father-in-law's company found out about the incident. Larry's father was demoted and sent to an insignificant division of the company, transferred to a remote office in the countryside. I heard that Larry's family has been ostracized by all his relatives because of what happened at the wedding. While it's unfortunate, it really was their own doing, and sometimes things like that just can't be avoided. In the meantime, I've been using this opportunity to strengthen my relationship with my dad. We've been spending more quality time together, and it's helped me appreciate all he's done for me even more. One day, he sat me down for a serious talk. Linda, are you interested in running the business? He asked, looking at me with a mixture of hope and seriousness. Do you mean, I started, a bit unsure where he was heading with this. Why don't you work towards becoming the president of my company? He suggested. It was a big step, and he seemed to believe I was ready to take it on. I'll do my best, I promised him, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. I decided then to focus on stepping up my game at work rather than getting entangled in romantic relationships for now. I want to prove to myself and to my dad that I could excel and perhaps one day be a great leader like him. Currently, I am deeply involved in learning everything I can at my dad's company. The work is challenging but fulfilling, and I'm determined to make the most of this opportunity. Reflecting on the wedding fiasco, it's clear that Larry's in-laws were quite unreasonable, turning what should have been a beautiful event into a spectacle. Thankfully, since the marriage wasn't officially registered, Linda, myself in this scenario, was spared from a legally binding mistake. Now, free from any marital ties and with no looming in-law issues, I can focus solely on my career aspirations. It's a relief to know that out of a chaotic situation came a clear path forward for me. I look forward to what the future holds and am excited about the potential of leading the company. I wish myself all the best and hope that anyone watching this story can take something valuable from it. Thank you for staying till the end. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed this story, and I hope to see you in the next video.